Afternoon, everybody. Losem Chaniabo. We're waiting for our moderator, but in the meanwhile, we'll get started so we won't lose any time. We appreciate everybody being here. And I would first like to introduce great-grandmother and knowledge holder, Mary Lyons of the Ojibwe Nation. From Fishing People. She's going to be a panelist too, but since this is a sacred topic to Indigenous peoples, it's part of our way of life and survival. Our fisheries, and for fishing Indigenous peoples, there's no other way of life, and climate change is definitely impacting us. So I have a slide to start with. Our technical folks, if you could put it up on the screen. I think they're eating lunch or something back there. Just with my words of introduction, this is just for the side event. The next slide, please. So we know what we're praying for and what we're working for here. I just wanted to show this slide that the United Nations estimates that there's 1 million species right now that are under threat of extinction because of climate change. And this is just a picture of one of them, which is the Central California salmon run that is vital for the nutrition and health, but also the ceremonial way of life for Indigenous peoples along the Pacific coast. And we are going to hear about salmon, but I wanted to just put this slide up so we remember what we're praying for and what we're working for here, and also what's at threat and what we are working to make sure survives. So with that, I'd like to invite great-grandmother Mary Lyons to do our opening invocation. Thank you.
Minu gizagan, and the way Maganawi gina ginawin amana ita nibi aki ishkude nudan nish nibi equate in this nakaz. I say this with a good heart. Kichimani do, Creator, as one we know. First and foremost, we give thanks to the 4 directions and to the 4 elements that brings us together. As each of us grow within the unity of a global family, we ask for your patience as we make mistakes. As each of us face our own energy that rages from within us, help us be mindful to use the energy in a good way. As each of us enter the chaos, the disorder, the dismantlement of the original instructions Creator gifted us, we ask for calmness so we move forward holding ancestral light of knowledge. Gichimani do, Creator as one knows them. We seek the courage that is imprinted in our DNA. We seek the mindfulness of what is right from wrong for all. We seek all the reminders of why each of us are here. We seek the instructions that were written in the oneness manner. Gichimani do, Creator as one knows them. We ask for help to center ourselves to hold the balance of wellness. We ask for love and compassion to radiate from each of us, so the people's union will become the strength that will bring the calm. We ask for safety in troubling times and show us how to mend this tear in time that breaks the shivering cold from the darkness that is here. We ask for bravery to understand another's way of life and to humble ourselves, to not invade our customs with our thinking. Creator, Gichimani do as one knows them. We ask that you cradle each of us in troubling times. We ask that you give us visuals when our minds go blank. We ask that you keep our water vessels pure. We ask that our minds be filled with reasonable thoughts that work for all. May each of you have a good day, and let's open this session with a good heart. Chimigwich, 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 gichimani do.
Thank you, great-grandmother Mary Lyons, Ojibwe Nation, fishing peoples from North America, to start us in a good way and remember why we're here, what we're praying for. And with that, and a welcome, of course, from the International Indian Treaty Council. Food sovereignty is one of our 4 main program areas, and it is very inextricably linked to every part of our way of life, our culture, our health, our ecosystems, our land rights, our treaty rights, and our human rights. So with that, I'd like to introduce the moderator for today, who will then be introducing the other panelists, Mr. Ghazali Ohorela from the Maluku indigenous peoples of the Pacific. They are Pacific peoples, even though they are under a military occupation by the government and country of Indonesia. We recognize them as a sovereign nation and fishing peoples as well from the Pacific. So he's going to say some introductory words and then be calling the panelists up. And I hope that we have some time for questions and input. And I also hope that we can make this issue a more central part of our discussions, not just among Indigenous peoples, but in the negotiations that are happening here, because right now it does not have a home. They talk about agriculture, but nobody's really talking about our fisheries, which is one of the most endangered aspects of our way of life and our food and knowledge systems around the planet. So with that, I'll ask Ghazali to come up. Ghazali Ohorela, known well as one of the tough negotiators here, but also from a fishing peoples in the Pacific. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Tabea, good morning. Well, not good morning. Well, some morning somewhere. Good afternoon. Respectful greetings, everyone. Like Andreas said, my name is Ghazali Ohorela. I'm from Maluku. If you don't know where it is, I don't blame you. It's right above Australia and 999 islands. So definitely relying on fisheries. And
They want me to make sure that everyone knows there's translation in Spanish and English, and we will have speakers in both languages. So if you want to get a headset and you don't understand both languages, please do so. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So that, so I can skip that housekeeping part. So if you require headsets, then please do so. Yeah, so to continue a little bit about myself, I'm from Maluku, 999 islands. My dad is from and mom are both from a fisheries village. If you want to look it up, Google, it's Tulehu is from my dad's side. And I've been granted bestowed the honor to navigate you all into this voyage. It is a little bit on indigenous wisdom and environmental stewardship. So this is not just about like just having this conversation, but actually having a deep dive into the waters of a knowledge and understanding the significance of indigenous knowledge, and also being able to understand it and also to recognize the situation of indigenous peoples when it comes to climate change. We have a lineup of what I would call like navigators with a breadth of knowledge and experience from indigenous people from all over the world. Here to chart for you a course in terms of like an understanding the issue at hand, but also to help you include fisheries into the climate conversation. As Andreas pointed out, it's mostly about agriculture at this point. However, water-based sustenance is of equal importance to not just indigenous peoples, but people in general, the world community as well. So I'm sure that I won't call them panelists, I will call them navigators. So the navigators themselves, they will have no problem introducing themselves. We'll start off with Mr. Anaru Fraser, hailing from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Proud Maori member of the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty in the Asia Pacific Small Scale Fisheries Commission, and he will illuminate to you on the impacts of climate change on Maori fishing peoples, guiding us through both oceanic and freshwater perspectives. Then we have the honor to hear to the wise words of Auntie Mary Lyons, our lighthouse from the Great Lakes region, and she will shine a light on the impacts the crisis has on her waters and how Indigenous women's cultural responses are creating ripples of change. Followed by Chief Gary Harrison, traditional chief of the Chickaloon village in Alaska and the voice of the Arctic Athabascan Council. And as part of the Global Coordinating Committee on Fisheries, Chief Harrison will take us on a journey to the icy waters of the Arctic, revealing the challenges and triumphs faced by Indigenous peoples over there. And obviously, also the youth dimension will be brought into this whole conversation. Mr. Onalin Masardule of the Kuna Nation in Panama, youth ambassador representing the newly established International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change. So definitely like round of applause for that. And he will bring a fresh current of ideas and actions and showing us how the new generation is steering this canoe that we're in towards a sustainable future. So each of our esteemed navigators will have 5 to 7 minutes, not indigenous minutes, but actual minutes, to cast their nets of knowledge. I invite you to dive in with us, soak up their wisdom, and please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Mr. Anaru Fraser. Anaru.
Thank you again for our opening prayer, our opening introductions to our brother Ghazali over there, and thank you all for coming along. Thank you for coming along to potentially hear some things you've been hearing all week, some things you'll be hearing for another week, but certainly things you'll never hear potentially again from me. What I started off there with, and just reiterating my brother, I come from the south of the Pacific. There's a couple of islands down there in the south known as New Zealand, or you might know them as New Zealand. Known to us as Aotearoa, or the land of the long white cloud. And I come from the northern island of those two islands, and I come from a little place, or a little region called the Hauraki region. And that chant that I begun with this today, one of our traditional chants from one of my tribes back in the Hauraki region. And why I started with that, particularly because pertinent to what we're going to talk about today around our fisheries, around the relevance to climate change, around the relevance to you. our peoples back home, yes, certainly a fishing. Our peoples back home, yes, certainly a fishing. Our peoples back home, yes, certainly a fishing tribe, aquaculture, and all those things that we've been hearing on this stage today. Disaster, certainly within the fisheries sector, within the fisheries context. So some of these things may not be new to us. But what I did want to mention, and I emailed my iwi, or my tribe the other day to let me know, okay, what things can I share with you today? Some of the big issues that we have. And they're wrapped up in things like our false solutions. They're wrapped up in things like our... if you've heard the term, best to be around the table than on the menu, right? And we've heard that a number of times. Sometimes we don't even know we're around the table, and sometimes we don't even realize we're actually the waiter at the table. We're just so glad to be around it sometimes that we forget that. And to reiterate some of the things we've heard today, we forget that we don't quite always have the resource. We don't quite always have the capacity. We certainly have the capability. Definition of traditional knowledge. We have the capability. We don't always have the time. And so we come to, and I heard it again mentioned this morning, today. So we come to COP28, and we'll probably come back to COP29. We'll say it again in COP30. There needs to be a line drawn somewhere that, okay, we just need to stop doing these things over and over again and still wishing and hoping for something different. Nevertheless, I congratulate you all for taking the time and energy, coming along, listening. Please think of some questions as we get into our Q&A session. But I'd like to think that we can do things a little bit differently. You actually don't need any of us up here today to tell you the things that we're going to tell you. That's what Google's for. Just go and Google it, wherever we're on the internet. But what are you going to do tomorrow? What can we do tomorrow? We have some really good solutions. And we've been talking about them all week. We'll talk about them for the rest of the year, and we'll come back to COP29 and talk about them again. But unless we can actually do something, solutions tend to go, well, nowhere really fast. However, in terms of one of my tribes back home, in the aquaculture space, we have, or at least we're attempting to not only just be around the table in terms of submitting to some of the issues we have back home with the benthic, kind of erasure of the benthic system that we have in one of our marina gulfs, that's then allowed what we might call, have you ever had that person or that family member, an old friend who come around for dinner and in 2 weeks they're still there? It's kind of what the seaweed or the calopa has come into our Gulf. After the bottom line trawling kind of wiped out our benthic cloak, so to speak. They come along back in the 1800s and it's still there. It's not going home. So our solution is, okay, we can moan about it, we can whine about it, but let's at least take the process. We have a process in place with our local ministries, our local councils, and we're investigating that. You know, we're navigating those processes because that's what you do. Follow the process that's there. When we find out it doesn't work, then I'll come back to COP29 and tell you all about it. But hopefully when I do come back, there's some good positive stories there. So that has everything to do with false solutions, because we're talking about marine protected areas here. Good intents from governments. Why not? Let's sanction an area of marine space, give it 100 years, and maybe it would have come back. Trouble is, we can't wait 100 years. Our future generations can't wait that long. We already have the solutions, we already have the traditional knowledge to help our councils, not so much as fast-track things, but do it in a way that speaks to all of the respect that we have, all of those things that we hold dear. It's just about going through the process. I'm also, and Chief Gary might touch on this later, I'm also part of a regional advisory group for the Asia Pacific, and we just recently released last month our report on the UN or the FAO voluntary guidelines on securing small-scale fisheries. And funnily enough, all of the issues come up again. Where's your disaster risk management assessment? Why are we not discouraging more false solutions? What about the community? What about the traditional knowledge holders? Where are they in the picture of the solution? So all of these same things are coming up. All I can say is, in a space like this, you wouldn't even realize this is an Indigenous meeting. Look around. I don't see a lot of Indigenous around on this particular floor, even this building, let alone this whole COP. But it's up to us to change that. It's up to us to be that presence, which is why I started with that chant, so others can hear the things and look around and say, hey, that's not just a normal meeting. I wonder what they're doing. Because it's those people that we need filling up these seats. We don't need to be talking to ourselves anymore. Let's talk to the people who we need to talk to. I'll leave it there. Kia ora and thank you very much.
Kia ora. Kia ora, thank you, Anaru. Now I'd like to give the floor to Auntie Mary Lyons, please. Go ahead. Sure, yeah.
I apologize. I had some slides in out there that I left at the room, so I'm going to do some animation here, right? Got to get you guys alive. I'm a storyteller. But I come from the center of the turtle we call Turtle Island. Right here, Canada. Here, United States, we call Canada. I live in the invisible line in the center called Minnesota. And I used to tease people. They say, where are you coming from? I said, I come from the stars, but the bill collectors find me in Minnesota. Yeah? So I want to say that with a good heart. One of the things I want to tell you about my territories is I want to read this so I get this correct, because this is important. I would like to share with you a brief history of my lands, the important as well as the tragedies. About 120 bands of Native Americans have occupied the Great Basin throughout history. The Great Lakes include 5 lakes, which include Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. From Lake Superior eastward, the Great Lakes are like stairs leading down to the St. Lawrence River, falling to the Atlantic Ocean. From time immemorial to today, communities, local businesses, and tribal members depend on the abundance of fish and wildlife in the Straits of the Mackinac. Commercial and fishing and hunting continue to provide economic survival for the majority of the tribal members. They're also home for more than 3,500 plant and animal species, some of which are found nowhere else in the world. We have over 250 different fish that reside in these basins. They hold about 90% of the fresh water in the United States and approximately 20% of the world's fresh water supply. 40 million residents of the United States and Canada depend on this system for clean drinking water. They cover an area as large as France and the United Kingdom combined together. That's how big it is. Unfortunately, commercial and sports fishing, agriculture, recreation, tourism, manufacturing, and shipping are also important to that region. Not to us, but to that region, which also contributes to loss and damage. The fishing industry extracts millions of pounds of fish per year from our lakes, sells it off into all the world, millions. The area is also known for its industry that produces steel, chemicals, and other products. Today, more than 200 million tons of cargo pass through its waters each year. There's great threat to our lakes, great threat. Climate change has affected the water temperatures, water patterns, and the lake levels. Fish pollutions have been declining in the recent years. Lake Erie, one of our beautiful lakes, is a dumping site and has recorded over 2,100 wrecked shipyards. What we face today in our beautiful lakes. In the 1950s, without tribal consultant nor seeking public input, the state of Michigan granted Enbridge. Enbridge is a company from Canada. And they gave them a lease and permission to build the original Line 5 as a dual pipeline in spite of the risk of oil spills in the Great Lakes. Now, what you just heard me say is that the fresh water source is a main source to Turtle Island, Canada, and the United States. Yet we allow this to be violated. And within that violation is a history of a whole another world, another whole life species in the stuff. Our fish are being harmed. Everything within that basin of water is being harmed. Anyways, they continue to do it. They continue to build these tunnels to house new segments for a pipeline, especially in the United States, that no one in the United States benefits from. We've also asked Canada to why didn't you put that line up in Canada? Why did you feel you have to route it down to the United States? And where that routing was through indigenous communities. It started off with Line 3 through Minnesota, went through Wisconsin, now it's in Michigan, and it goes back up into Canada. And Minnesota has 10,000 lakes, and we have the most beautiful fish and wild rice in our plants, as well as Wisconsin. And now we hit the basin with the 5 Great Lakes. The destruction of water and the wildlife and the species is being harmed. It's important that we pay attention, because those clear, clean, fresh waters that houses the food that we even contribute from is being harmed. Is being harmed. So what I want to say is that throughout this, when we talk about agriculture out there, we also have to include this life. It's not that we're taking an abundance. We only take what that life, that water provides for us. And now it's being harmed. So it's important, but amongst this, in closing, what I would like to say, within this loss and damage of the fish and everything within those basins of our lakes also is a threat, because within this industry also falls the humans, the missing and murdered indigenous women of today and from times past. So these lakes also have become a sacred site for us. Not only a resting place for the fish and everything in that life that being contaminated, but also the many bodies that were thrown over those ships that came in from that strait up into the basins of our 5 lakes. So this is something to think about. So when you pass your waters and the freshness of the water that provides the fruits and everything else, you have to say a little prayer of gratitude. But we also, not only of what's going on, we have to stand up for things beyond and things we forget about. So I want to say Chi Miigwech, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I assume that everyone has questions, so please reserve your questions to the end, to the Q&A part of this conversation. I'd like to now give the floor to Chief Gary.
I'll do it from up here because I got a PowerPoint. This is the second PowerPoint I've ever done in my life. The earlier one was on fires with Chief Bill. Willie Jan, Kashka, Gary Harrison, and Sedida, Tolchina Atlan, Nadeniana. Good day, I'm Chief Gary Harrison. I'm a water clan, and I'm from Chikloon Village. And that's the way we say our stuff in our language. We're Dene, Otnit and a Dene. And I don't know if you want to cue up the slideshow. But anyhow, this here is the picture on the left is a picture of the Copper River. It's one of the most prolific red salmon streams in Alaska. It's also got king salmon in there, silvers come up there, and several species of salmon. And that's basically where I have to go to get salmon now. The picture on the right is the river where I live, Chikloon, and in World War I, they fueled the Pacific Fleet with the coal from there, and then wiped out the salmon there, so we have to go elsewhere to get our salmon. But it does turn out that our people are also from the Copper River in a large land area, so it's still our nation's area. You can't quite tell from this picture, but you'll see that's where two rivers meet, and it's very large river, it's huge. And if you could move to the next slide. This here is a fish wheel. This is how we fish now on the Copper River. And the river powers this wheel. It's got a paddle, and then it's got a slide, and it slides the fish right into that box, and then we just pick them out of the box. Next slide, please. And this is king salmon before it's cut up. Next slide. And this is traditional ways that we take care of the salmon. We take and we smoke them. And you got to get your salmon in a certain time of the year, and it's generally in the beginning to the middle of the summer, because at the end of the year it's the rainy season, and it's hard to dry salmon when it's raining with all that moisture in the air. And you got to do it a certain way, otherwise the meat will slide right off the skin, because the skin's what's holding it on those poles. And you got to dry it real hard, because in the wintertime, that's what you have to eat. It's part of your sustenance. It's not all of it, because we also have moose in the winter as well. And we won't talk about the hunting right now, though. Another slide. This here is a traditional way we used to take care of the forest. In the wintertime, we would burn the excess fuel on the trees. And the reason I'm showing this is because we've had a lot of forest fires, a lot of them over in Canada. And what happens is when they don't burn the excess fuel, it burns the land right down into the mineral soil, and then it rains and it washes the soil into the streams, and the fish can't live with that. They can't live with all that stuff in their gills. And the other thing about this is the fish also depend on those trees to keep the water cool. They're a cold water fish. And along with exacerbation of the forest fires from climate change, you also have all of the changes in the ocean. And what's happening now is a lot of the fish, they're still seeking cold water, so they've been moving further and further north. And right now, at the Arctic Council, they've negotiated an agreement that they're not going to fish in the Arctic Ocean right now. And part of the reason is because they're not sure what's going on, but the fish are moving, the salmon are moving into the Arctic Ocean, and in some of the rivers, they're showing up where they've never been before. And this is part of the climate change, because fish are like humans. They gotta go find a place to spawn. But that's one of the reasons for this slide here, because people don't realize we used to take care of the forest so that we wouldn't have such terrible fires. The fires we'd have fires all over, but they would just burn over the land, and then the land would rejuvenate itself. Now it takes a lot longer for the land to rejuvenate itself because it's burned all the seeds and everything else right down into the ground. The next year would be the sprouts would come out on the trees, and the moose would forage and everything like that. So it's very important to the fish and everything else that's on the lands about these forest fires. And it's a real part of climate change that a lot of people don't realize, that that's one of the problems with climate change. I don't know if there's any more slides, but the other thing we need to talk about is what's happening. There's these huge trawlers that are out in at the mouth of a lot of the rivers, and they catch everything. They've killed like 10 killer whales this year already, and the bycatch is part of it is salmon, and they throw these salmon away. They don't keep them. There's a lot of other fish and other things in the ocean that they throw away as well. They throw away about 2/3 of the catch that they catch in these trawlers. And it's an incredible amount. I mean, tons and tons and tons of fish that we could all use. It not only that, but it scrapes the bottom of the ocean, and it tears up the ocean to where a lot of the fish and other things that live in the ocean can't survive anymore. This year, they're having the first time of a red crab season that they've had in many years, because of these trawlers have ripped up the bottom of the ocean. And they're moving more and more into international waters to where there's not as much regulation. For instance, in Antarctica, they've got these trawlers down there scooping up the krill. The krill is part of the basis for life in the ocean. The whales depend on this krill, and they're just scooping it up. And part of the reason is because there's hardly anybody watching, for one thing, and the international laws need to be strengthened down there to keep this kind of stuff from happening. How am I doing on time? Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Chinan.
I apologize, but I just want to make sure that there's sufficient time for some interaction. So without further ado, sorry, frog in my throat. Mr. Onalin Masardule, I'd like to give you the floor. Don't know.
First of all, I need to everyone have the headphones, because I'm gonna speak in Spanish, because my quote is gonna be so deep. So I need to inform that. Primeramente, mi nombre es Onel Inanadinia Mazardule, soy cuna de Panamá y es un gusto hablarle el tema que acabamos de tocar. Y me siento honrado actualmente por ser el último orador porque estos grandes sabios han compartido muchas experiencias, muchos conocimientos a la cual han vivido durante la vida. Entonces, por mi parte, me tengo que hacer ese cordón umbilical, como dice mi compañero. También informarme y traspasar mi conocimiento como juventud. Y bajo este contexto, yo lo quiero comenzar con un antecedente acerca de mi pueblo. ¿Qué pueblo represento hoy en día como cuna? El pueblo cuna actualmente tiene 365 islas. Es la comarca Cunayala y 49 son habitadas. Entonces, dentro de esas 49 habitadas, cada isla tiene un saila, tiene un gran líder, como se le dice. Entonces, nosotros nos representamos también en base a un omaquenega. Y le digo que le voy a hablar de esta manera porque también voy a utilizar mi idioma dentro de este contexto a lo cual estoy compartiendo. Y es algo muy importante porque nosotros como juventud vamos conociendo la información a través de los sabios. Y así hacemos esa intergeneracionalidad, ese intercambio de experiencias. Comienzo con esto es porque nosotros como cunas venimos de los ríos. Y nuestros grandes abuelos nos indican que así como venimos de los ríos, también es nuestra última morada. Y en base a esto llevo a más información que este tema me lleva muy profundo, es porque tengo una relación sumamente importante con los ríos. Porque despedí a mi abuelo en los ríos sagrados, como se le dice. No nos despedimos al cielo, vamos a los ríos sagrados. En base a eso, al día siguiente de que falleció mi abuelo, nosotros como cunas tenemos algo que hay un urbipi, que se le dice un cayuco chico o una canoa chica, en diferentes idiomas. Y yo me levanté sumamente temprano para rescatar ese urbipi, porque tiene esa conexión con la partida de mi abuelo. Entonces, en base a eso, esa información que me queda es para conocer el arte de la pesca que hemos desarrollado, como mediante casas de envenenamiento, en base a casas en pequeños sectores, y nosotros utilizamos ese urbipi como medio de transporte. Y actualmente hoy hablamos de cambio climático, entonces nosotros también lo practicamos con el urbipi, hacer ese tipo de pescas. Vamos a zonas de 10 millas a 15 millas, como se le reconoce en mar territoriales, para también pescar lo que nosotros nos alimentamos. Pero lo hacemos de una manera de conservación. Conservamos a los dulups, que son las langostas, al ua, que es nuestros peces. Entonces, en base a eso, nosotros también respetamos a la madre tierra. Respetamos también nuestra cosmovisión como indígenas. Es precisamente sumamente importante, a pesar que no sea el gran experto en pesca, pero a través del conocimiento que mis abuelos me han dado, tengo el saber y el poder de compartir esta información con ustedes. Este mensaje no solamente es de manera individual de Onel y Nanadilla Mazardule, esto también tiene un trabajo colectivo que mis hermanos están hoy en día en la comarca practicando nuestras pescas tradicionales en base a nuestra cosmovisión como indígenas. Y nosotros somos indígenas y tenemos esa relación con esa natguana, con esa madre tierra. Y eso es por eso muy importante conservarla y respetarla y amarla. Y es por eso en nuestra vida. Y en base al tema de la pesquería, hoy en día nosotros como jóvenes también debemos de practicarlo a lo que hacen nuestros ancestros o lo que actualmente siguen luchando para mantener la pesquería actual en la comarca Cunayala. Y algo muy importante de la pesca que nosotros utilizamos es de manera de intercambio. Intercambio que nosotros hacemos un intercambio de comida por dinero o comida por plátano. Se hace un trato entre cuna y se va haciendo ese beneficio común, como se le dice. Por eso es muy importante el tema de la pesquería que hoy han abordado estos grandes líderes, porque nosotros como juventud tenemos que mantener. Y hay 4 fundamentos que quiero compartir de insumos para poder cerrar este tema. Es que también tenemos que educarnos como joven. Igual manera nosotros también tenemos que educar a nuestros mayores en base a nuestras experiencias que vamos viviendo durante el proceso de la pesquería. Y ellos me compartieron 3 insumos que quiero añadirles, que es en base a la protección, la recuperación y manejo de los sistemas marinos y pesqueros. Algo muy fundamental que ellos me indicaron que lo dijera a través de esta voz. Y también información del desarrollo de nuestro derecho propio como indígena. Y también realizar los estudios e investigación acerca de la pesquería, que actualmente no lo sistematizamos, nosotros lo hacemos de manera oral. Entonces, con esto concluyo y muchas gracias por su presencia el día de hoy.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Starting off, we're appreciating the navigators for their contributions for this conversation. To lead us into a dialogue. So, if you have any questions, some comments that you would like to pose to the distinguished panel, please feel free to do so. We have a couple of minutes to share some thoughts. Before you do so, please introduce yourself, and if you have any direct questions and who you might want to direct it to, then I'd like to open up the floor if there's any. Onel Mastardule Senior.
Sí, bueno, mi nombre es Onel Mazardule. Yo sé, somos el relevo, el eslabón, ¿ya? Bueno, yo creo que la exposición ha sido muy enriquecedor. Yo tuve la oportunidad de visitar la región de Canadá, los indígenas Chuchuap. Estuve viviendo un mes pescando salmón de diferentes formas, ahumando, y aprendí, ya. Yo creo que es lo que tenemos que hacer, es intercambio, ¿ya? Intercambio de conocimiento, la forma de pesca de un pueblo a otro pueblo, porque esto nos enriquece. Y luego en mi tierra, de igual manera, yo creo que todo, ya sea recurso marino, el recurso terrestre, los indígenas lo sabemos gestionar como es. Todavía en los territorios nuestros pueden ir a ver las especies que en la UCN aparece como en lista roja, todavía lo pueden encontrar. Eso significa el tipo de manejo que hacen los pueblos indígenas, el uso consuetudinario sostenible de la biodiversidad. Entonces yo creo que lo que me han compartido todos, le he aprendido, y yo creo que esto es lo más importante. Esa es la riqueza, saber cómo un pueblo se dedica a la pesca, cómo lo hace. Yo sé que el tiempo es muy corto, pero por lo menos hay elementos muy importantes que nos han dicho. Uno es la transmisión, otra es la forma como por lo menos el tema de control de incendio, cómo lo hacen. O sea, aquí, quizás uno lo puede decir, el incendio, ¿qué tiene que ver con la pesca? Es que yo siempre digo, el mundo indígena, el mundo lo vemos los indígenas de manera integral. Todo está conectado, todo. ¿Ya? Quizás el hombre blanco lo ve fraccionado, como lo digo siempre, ¿ya? Pero nosotros lo vemos integralmente, y todo eso tiene que ver con la naturaleza. Nada más quería comentar eso. Gracias.
Yes. Uncle Philip, please.
Thank you, August panelists. I thank you so much for your delivery this afternoon. I learned a few things. I am from Fiji, from the Pacific. Our connotation and perspective of this discussion is a little bit different in a way that the Pacific is a group of archipelagic islands. So it's coast, mountains. Some mountains are 3 meters, then coast. I'm talking about Tuvalu, Kiribati, Niue, Marshalls. So this is a general, my brother from Aotearoa mentioned something about this. This is a general question to the panel. In the Pacific, when we talked about the sustainability of our fisheries, things that remain dominant to us is the critical importance of the relationship between the mountains, I meaning forest-dependent resource owners who lives in the mountain, and the ones who lives in the coast. And this is a disconnect when we talked about, we may at this level talk about South-South partnership. I really would like to take it to the local indigenous level among our countries. I'm really looking at my brother sitting beside me here, continental Africa. The great importance to have this sort of South-South partnership amongst our own people so that we can save our fisheries. In Fiji, there's 2 big plantation estate forests, 2 species that are not indigenous. They are brought in, pine and mahogany. Now, when they chop this, there's massive. You can actually imagine what happens at the downstream. So this is something that I just would like to bring to the, I just want to hear maybe from Chief, my brother Teroa. I know there are big plantation. What is, for us in our drive towards sustainable fisheries, what is or how do you think the way forward in terms of raising up the nexus or the critical importance of sustainable forest management and sustainable land management and sustainable coastal management and sustainable inshore fisheries management? Thank you so much.
All right, so we'll do one more question and then some reflections from the panel. Is that okay?
Gracias, González. Nada más tengo un comentario de lo que se estaba. Yo creo que la biodiversidad tiene mucho que ver, yo creo que se relaciona en todo, ¿no? Pero mi pregunta es, como ya estamos viviendo los cambios climáticos, pues hay sequías y en otras partes hay demasiada agua, que se están ahogando, están muriendo. Pero mi pregunta es, para que me la pueda responder, con ayuda de la audiencia. Esta pregunta es para los panelistas. ¿Ya estamos preparados para recibir todo eso? Estamos de verdad, ¿qué debemos de hacer para frenar todo ese cambio climático? Yo creo que este bienestar, lo que ando buscando, es también para las nuevas generaciones. No queremos que ellos vivan lo que estamos viviendo ahora. Ahora yo creo que debemos de empezar, pero ¿qué es lo que vamos a hacer? ¿Cómo debemos prepararnos para recibir todos esos problemas que se avecinan? Porque esto no es cosa de juego, esa es cosa verídica que estamos sufriendo ahorita. Ahorita estamos sufriendo de a poco, pero poco a poco se va a ir engrandeciendo más y más esos cambios. Así que esa es mi pregunta. Si ya estamos preparados, así que notifíquenos para nosotros seguir en nuestros pueblos, prepararnos también. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're a little bit pressed for time, so I would like to invite the panelists for some reflections, briefly, 1 minute if possible, and also, comment on the questions. Who can I give to?
Does this work?
One of the things is that The salmon that I'm talking about go to the Pacific Ocean where you're from and they return. So that's part of the symbiotic relationship that you're talking about. And I forgot to mention that many of the salmon have crashed on the rivers in Alaska, and that's why I mentioned the trawlers. They throw away all of that fish. And for one of the things I think that we can do is we can start looking at some of this renewable energy that's out there and start doing something about it rather than what a lot of people are doing at this COP. They're just talking about it. And it's also kind of, to me, an oxymoron that we're all here and the carbon footprint that we put down to come here and talk about the climate. And that's one of... You know, we talk about the internal combustion engine. You can burn hydrogen and it puts out clean water. So that's just one of the ways I think that we can do it and still have the lifestyle that we would like to have. Thank you.
I'm old school. I just, as much as we want to stop it and fight the companies, we'll be talking about this 10 years from now. So what each of us have to do, there's one day I don't travel. I don't use gas. I don't buy. And if you can teach one other person to stop feeding that animal, they'll feel the repercussions. If there is a way that we can get back to just even bicycling, anything we can do for the planet and everything that is in the planet that doesn't have to have the necessity of what is destroying it. If we can just do a little bit from our own self and to our children's, where they learn it, to pass it on, to encourage them to not be in the consumption, we'll get there. But it's going to take a long ways. You know, we live tens of thousands of years organically. Took us less than 150 years to destroy it. It's going to take us a long time to get back. But right now, this place has no heartbeat. Those people that have money deal with facts and finance. That's artificial intelligence. We are the heartbeat. We are the elephant in the room. What we have to do is pull back. It's easy to keep the lights on, feel this cold air, and to jump in the car to do that. But what we as individuals have to do is lessen it. Start almost detaching ourselves from that. Does that make sense? Good question, though. That's a really good question. Miigwech.
Anaru Onalin, please.
Gasali. Tiene que ser más minutos, pero bueno, voy a resumir todo en un minuto, hacer lo mejor posible. Primero, gracias, don Ángel, por las palabras. Lo que quiero tocar algo muy importante, porque en el Acuerdo de París se habla sobre resiliencia climática. Pero nosotros como indígenas, como pueblos indígenas, somos los primeros a ser resilientes al cambio climático. Nos adaptamos. Y es algo muy importante que hay que tocar, es porque nosotros como jóvenes no debemos de ver el mañana, sino tomar acción el día de hoy. Porque si no, no va a haber mañana. Entonces, a la respuesta que le voy a dar es claramente que nosotros debemos de trabajar conjuntamente las 7 regiones socioculturales con una visión totalmente colectiva. De esos grandes líderes también hay que trabajar con esos grandes líderes jóvenes también para poder replicar de un mejor accionar acerca del cambio climático. Entonces, con esto concluyo y creo que para mayores diálogos podemos conversar otro día.
That was 1 minute, actually, so that's very good. Anaru, please.
Ko te aroha no he wai he pupu a ke ana he awa he ma puna mai ana I roto I te whatu manawa o e is saying is that to answer or to respond back to the two questions, one of the things that we're doing back home and we've acknowledged is our customary, we have a customary knowledge training program for our younger ones coming through, because we know they need to know about sustainable land management. They need to know about sustainable fisheries management. They need to know the cultural practices that we've practiced before, despite the fact that things have been taken away, despite the problems, the issues that are happening. They need to know. And that goes towards Angel, what Angel was talking about. What do we do? What can we do? Yes, we have to burn a couple of carbon footprints to get here, but when we get here, we need to make the best of the moment we have. And all I can say for you in terms of what we're doing, it's all about our young ones, about instilling that information, instilling that knowledge, giving them the confidence, developing that confidence, and giving them that capacity and capability to come back to these, to talk about the things that our brother's talking about as a starting point.
Thank you so much, Naru. As we have heard, there's a notion of knowledge that's out there on fisheries, and it's also very important. I think this panel made it very obvious that small-scale fisheries needs to be a integrated topic when it comes to the climate change, definitely at COP. So I hope that when Anaru comes back next year and can report back from FAO, if Auntie Mary Lyons can come back as well, Chief Gary and Onaline, that we'll have a robust conversation about small-scale fisheries, not just about agriculture, but that as well. So thank you all, so to panelists, interpreters, and yourself for joining this conversation. And if you have any questions, please walk up to them and go back to your negotiations, please.